Today, we're talking about the vagus nerve, what some call your body's secret superhighway. We're going to explore this single, pretty mysterious nerve that connects your brain all the way to your gut, and it might just hold the key to your stress levels.
So let me ask you this. What if I told you that one single wandering nerve secretly controls your stress, your digestion, and maybe even how you connect with other people? I know, it sounds kind of like science fiction, right? But it's real. It's called the vagus nerve, and it's basically a master control system for your body.
And its name is just perfect. It comes from the Latin word vagus, which literally means wandering, and that's exactly what it does. It's the longest and most complex of our cranial nerves, and it travels all over the body, kind of like the root system of a huge tree. It starts at the brain and just wanders down, connecting to almost every major organ. But with a path that long and complicated, what happens when this super important highway hits a roadblock?
Well, that brings us to our first section, when stability is lost. Because when this system gets thrown off balance, the effects can be felt everywhere. To really get what's going on, we have to start right at the source, at the very top of its journey.
And it all starts right at the top of your neck. We're talking about the spot where your skull connects to your spine. This area is incredibly delicate, and it's absolutely crucial. It's not just holding up your head, it's also the main pathway for the vagus nerve as it makes its way out of the brain.
So, when those ligaments, the things that are supposed to hold your head securely onto your neck, get loose or lax, you get a condition called craniocervical instability, or CCI. This means your top two vertebrae, C1 and C2, can move around way too much. The best way to think about it is like a door hinge that's come loose. It's just not stable anymore. Okay, so what causes this to happen? Well, it could be something obvious, like trauma from a car accident, think whiplash, but it can also come from underlying conditions. Things like connective tissue disorders, a big one is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or even inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or congenital ones like Down syndrome.
And the direct symptoms of this instability, well, they're not pleasant. We're talking about persistent headaches, really bad neck pain right at the base of your skull. A lot of people describe this really strange feeling like their head is just too heavy to hold up. On top of that, you've got dizziness and brain fog, but believe it or not, this is just where the story begins.
And this is where it all starts to connect. Because that problem, that instability up in your neck, it doesn't just stay there. It creates these massive ripple effects that go through your whole body. It throws the entire system into chaos. So here's the key. As those top vertebrae, C1 and C2, are moving around more than they should, they can actually start to press on or compress the vagus nerve that's running right next to them. And just like that, you've got a physical roadblock on this super important communication highway. Now, to really get why this is such a big deal, you have to understand your body's two main modes. You've got your sympathetic system, which is your fight or flight response. That's for when things get intense. And then you have your parasympathetic system, which is all about rest and digest. It's what calms you down. And guess what? The vagus nerve is the main player, the primary manager of that all-important rest and digest state. So think about it. When that nerve gets compressed, the rest and digest signal gets blocked. It's like the brake pedal in your car just stopped working. Your body can't calm itself down, and it gets stuck in fight or flight mode all the time. And this imbalance kicks off a whole cascade of symptoms that seem totally unrelated to a neck problem, right? You might see an elevated heart rate, a condition known as POTS. The vagus nerve is also tied to our senses, so you can get things like tinnitus, that ringing in your ears, or even blurred vision. And of course, if your body is constantly on high alert, you're gonna feel it. Chronic fatigue is a huge one because you're just burned out. Let's take a really concrete example, digestion. There's a condition called gastroparesis, where your stomach empties way too slowly. And why does this happen? It can be a direct result of the vagus nerve not being able to send the go signal to your stomach muscles, telling them to contract and push food through. The message just isn't getting delivered. Okay, so it's not just about physical problems like compression. The nerve itself is way more complex, way more mysterious than we used to think. And this has led to some really interesting and sometimes heated debates in the scientific community.
You see, for the longest time, the textbook picture of the vagus nerve was this single, clean highway. But then, an NIH study in 2015 completely flipped that idea on its head. They were looking at body donors and found that almost a third of them, 29%, had major branching of the nerve right there in the neck. It wasn't one highway. For many, it was more like a complex river delta. This discovery was a game changer, telling us that there's no single normal when it comes to this nerve. And this physical complexity, this branching and variation, is mirrored by a lot of complexity in the theories about what it actually does, especially when it comes to our emotions and our social lives. You might have heard of this one. It's pretty popular, but also pretty debated. The polyvagal theory. The basic idea is that we have this three-level defense system. At the top, you have the ventral vagal, which is all about feeling safe and socially connected. If that doesn't work and you sense danger, you drop down to the good old sympathetic fight or flight system. And if you're really in trouble, the theory says, you go to the most primitive level, the dorsal vagal, which is a total shutdown or freeze response. But here's the thing. Well, it's a compelling story. This theory has some serious scientific hurdles. For example, a key claim is that the social vagal part is unique to us mammals. Well, turns out they've found similar nerve structures in lungfish, which kind of messes with the evolutionary timeline. Critics also say there isn't really solid anatomical proof that a specific part of the nerve controls that freeze response, and even the main way people try to measure vagal tone is now seen as pretty unreliable because it's influenced by a bunch of other things, not just the vagus nerve. So, okay, we've talked about physical compression, we've touched on these really complex, debated theories. So what's the bottom line? Why does this one nerve matter so much? Here's why. At the end of the day, the vagus nerve is the master regulator of your body's internal balance. The scientific term is homeostasis. Think of it like the conductor of a huge orchestra. It's making sure everything, your heart, your lungs, your gut, is all playing in time and in perfect harmony. And that quote from the NIH researchers back in 2015 really says it all. They concluded, and I'm quoting here, that no normal vagus nerve morphology and topography exists. What they're saying is, there is no normal. The complexity, the variation, that's what's normal. And we are really just scratching the surface of understanding it. So the big takeaway here is that the vagus nerve is this absolutely critical, incredibly complex system. It's the physical link between our physical bodies and that massive invisible communication network running inside of us. And that leaves us with one last, really big question to think about. As scientists keep digging into all its secrets, could this one wandering nerve actually be the hidden link between our physical health and our mental health? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining me.